Hey guys, welcome back to another video. We are, of course, Final Sector, and today we are recording our 2023 driver move predictions. Take two, we technically recorded maybe point 0.3, 0.4 of a take, and then, as everything does, it all went to crap. Webcams died, then recordings died, things got corrupted, had to go to the shop.
Yeah, why would you do that, Kyle? Why would all your recordings fail? No, it wasn't me. No.
We did do this same video last year, and we quite enjoyed, I think, thinking about it ahead of time, and then, at the end of the year, reflecting on that. We did just put that video out recently, so if you haven't already, go have a look at that to see, what we thought last year, and then you can see how, brave or nonsensical going to be this year compared to that.
Spoiler, it's going to be way more nonsensical.
We initially, when we were going over this, we didn't inform each other of our selections. As we did do a part recording, we do know a few of the things we've selected, but we only got through about 3.5 teams, so there's still, as we go along the list, quite a lot that we don't both know. So we have it just in random team order at this point. So the first team that we went on, which I think, will be a nice and quick one for everyone who's doing this, is Ferrari.
Yes.
I will be shocked once again to know who you have chosen for Ferrari. I forgot who you've picked. Who have you?
I've gone with Leclerc and Sainz. It's crazy. Ferrari's one of the few teams that I have that are unchanged. And I expect them, assuming both drivers perform the way that they have, I expect them to stay unchanged for possibly years ahead of 2023 as well. So
no, I agree, and as we mentioned, I think in our season review, both of them just have upped their game, and they're really putting everything into it. And really, Ferrari's an end goal team. It's not like even if the team wanted them, but they wanted to move on, well, it's not like they've got anywhere else to really move on. What's the chance that you'd say maybe a 1 in a billion that someone like Mercedes would take them, right? So other than that, you got to see the both of them there. They're still, very young, and Ferrari's been known in the past for often having, more experienced older drivers that they like to keep on, so there's really no reason why they get rid of them.
Yep.
Of course, the argument could be, while there are some juniors in the ranks, if Mick has a killer year, then maybe okay, but he'd really have to pull out something, even more stunning than, what Russell has done on that, which there's a chance, but I think we're pretty safe to say next year it's not going to change.
Yeah, I think they're obviously building Mick up for when a seat eventually does become available for Ferrari, which he's in a pretty shit position at the moment because those two are doing so well and they are so young. So it's, Mick might be waiting for a little while. So, but we'll see. You never know what can happen. The new regs, it might not, Sainz might come in and be like, I just don't like the new car, and, you just can't get a handle on it, and he just falls way off. You just really never know.
So now next we had in our list was Williams. Williams are going through quite a lot of change right now where they've, traditionally, I guess you'd say over the past 5 or 6 years, it feels like they've more just been trying to survive and kind of just, keep on keeping on without investing too much and kind of just picking drivers that fit best, for the time. I think we both agree that they're properly trying to think about their future and how they want to set up as part of that. So that makes it quite tricky trying to think, okay, well then are they going to pick up, a junior and such that maybe they want to see for, another 5-10 years rather than just take another, Merck Jr. or whoever Jr., right? So we both had a driver that we thought would stay on, but interestingly, we didn't have the same driver we thought that would stay on. So which of the two drivers do they have for this year do you think will stay on for next year?
Yeah, so I've got Albon staying there. I find it hard to believe that Albon's only going to be there for 1 year. I know he's obviously with the Red Bull program, and he will likely want to go back there. Slight spoiler, given my selections I've got in that program, I don't see him there for 2023. So, I expect Albon there for a couple of years. Latifi, I don't. For this year, I backed him to say, he'll have at least 1 more year. But, I'm not sure that he'll do enough this year to be able to hold his seat to a junior, like you said, who I think will come in. But obviously I went Albon, you obviously went the opposite, which is interesting. We kind of swapped roles from last year. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
The reason is because I don't think Albon will stay on for Williams, and I'll leave it for that for now to not say more in that regard. with, it going from the first to second year in the new cars, and if they are pulling in someone else that's not inside the team, I think it wouldn't be that strong a move for any team to change both drivers in 1 year. I do think that Albon will be the stronger driver overall. I still think they need to keep on a driver, and just how I think other dice will roll in the driver ecosystem.
A lot of these moves are based, like, they're all based around other moves. I found, like, I found when I was trying to do this, I would change one driver and it would affect 3 or 4 different other moves, and it's just like, I guess the other drivers that I had in contention for that seat, obviously you've got your Jack Aitken, who's sort of been in and around the Williams team for a little while. They, for whatever reason, they just don't seem to want him as a full-time driver.
I think he does decent in testing, but his pace has been thereabouts. But really, every year he's consistently outclassed by 3 or 4 other drivers.
And then the other one that I considered was there's Frederick Vesti, who is a Merc junior. Williams obviously having their ties to Mercedes. He's had 2 years in F3. He's just landed an ART seat in F2. But I expect him to have probably a couple of years in F2 before Merc probably push him. I would say possibly to maybe a test and reserve for Mercedes, maybe even for Williams. I'm not too sure. That's 2024. Those were my potentials for that second seat, but in the end I went with Logan Sargent, who is a Williams junior driver, so he is actually part of the Williams program.
As of this year,
he had 2 years in F3. He's very similar to Vesti, actually. He had 2 years in F3, landed an F2 seat this year. The difference with Sargent, one, obviously being the Williams junior, obviously closer ties to the actual team. He was also very, very unlucky not to win the F3, the first F3 year where Piastri won it. He was tied on points with Piastri going into the final race, and then I think he had a collision and had to retire the car. So... and then the following year didn't even get an F2 seat for that. He kind of got stiffed a bit.
There was a lot of people coming through, and he just got a bit unlucky.
So, but he does have an F2 seat with Carlin. Carlin can be a competitive team, as we saw with Tictum. Carlin are competitive, so I think he could do very, very well. Yeah.
And as we said, Williams has always had one seat that you feel like is kind of rotated, either because it's worked for money or something like that, right? Think of like Sergei Sorokin drivers like that, right? Which are all still fine Williams drivers, but they weren't there for the long term. I think it would be silly for them to again go next year with another pay driver and such. I don't think it would show the fact that they want to mature and be taken as a proper outfit. They need someone there for Williams. Latifi, you could say is, but you feel like he's more, as you say, just kind of helping out, but he's not really the future. He's not, the young gun, the Norris or the Russell, right?
Yeah, for sure. So... and you had Sargent as yours.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Yeah, I don't know if you actually mentioned it, but yeah, we both had Sargent in the end.
So third we had up, which we can probably, summarize pretty quickly, was Aston Martin. If I haven't seen anyone yet that's picked, I did do a bit of a look. I haven't seen anyone that's picked anything different than we've picked for this one. So if it does change, I think it would be a big shock. Maybe some would say a welcome shock. But we've both gone with the same pairing for the next year.
Sure have. Yeah, I think Aston and Ferrari were the two that are just like, yep, okay, these are... If anyone picks a change in either of those teams, you'd be making a very bold call.
They've got to have some big secret or some,
big brain,
500 IQ play, yes.
Vettel has the multi-year contract. He seems to like the environment there after coming off an environment in Ferrari that sort of wore him down. And Stroll...
He's doing enough, isn't he? Yeah. Yes, we know why he's there. It's not like he's running around chasing his tail and, as they try to evolve, they might go, well, of course we need to get rid of him because he's doing nothing. He's still doing enough.
Yeah, no, he can still hold his own. He has, I think I mentioned this in the deleted recording, is that, he's gotten better year on year. So, if he can continue that progression, then, I think people have already sort of warmed up to the fact that maybe he's not as bad as people seem to make him out to be.
You hear a lot less crying out to get him out of there. Early on, you heard a lot of, he's taking up a spot, get him out of there.
That's it.
You don't really hear that anymore. You really only hear him talking about when he has maybe a bit of an off, as any other driver could have, right?
For sure, yeah. So
yeah, and I think it was he said about Vettel as well, the argument, I guess, less is he going to go to a different team, but more so after this stint, he's probably going to be looking at retirement, right? You know what I mean? He's had quite a fair stint. He could pull a Raikkonen or an Alonso and go on for a while, but then you just look at his direction and you go, well, where's he going to go from there? It's not like he's going to get a gig better than that. And Aston, going through all the change they're going through behind the scenes, are probably using him to say, we want you to lead our future of our team, right? And Stroll's probably happy to do that because he's like, I get an F1 drive and I get experience from one of the greatest drivers of the current generation. So, I'll trust Vettel to, lead the direction of that. So it's kind of a win-win for both parties, right?
For sure.
So fourth up was Haas.
Yeah.
I did see a few people discuss this a bit more than others, but I think we're both of the opinion that probably going to stick with what they've got for the year after. Some of the arguments some people made was that maybe because of monetary reasons or because of just unlucky shuffling that Mick might get the boot for someone else. You'd say, again, similar to the Stroll thing, Mazepin is probably staying there for a while, right? Because the car basically is entirely funded by his sponsors and such. I feel like he might be similar to a Stroll line where he started a bit rough, but I feel like he could prove himself to be a bit more of a Stroll where he can do decent enough, especially because it's really hard to rate last year because we truly don't know, how difficult the car was to drive. Yes, on average, Mick kind of outperformed him, but then if Mick is allegedly the next Russell, well, then you'd argue that Mick could outperform anyone, right?
That's it, yeah.
So going forward, if this is trying to be a big cultural change for F1 and allow teams to stop having to just pick up drivers that are best, for the wallet or whatever, more go, no, we want actually, drivers for the long term to run our team, then that's really what Mick is going to do.
I do think he'll play the Russell game and just sort of bide his time. Yeah. Mick does have the reserve driver role for Ferrari, so if one of Sainz and Leclerc do go out, they'll get Mick in. They've backed Fittipaldi to take that spot if Mick does actually get the call up to go to Ferrari for one of those races. Gunther Stein has come out and just said Fittipaldi will race if Mick's required for the Ferrari reserve role. So I don't know that they'll change from the Schumacher Mazepin that they've got. You've got all your Ferrari juniors that you could throw in there, your Ilots, your Schwartzmans, your Giovinazzi's, who are still part of the program, being that Haas is sort of they're more becoming the Ferrari secondary team, sort of ish. But yeah, it seems like it just can't see it happening. I can't see them taking out either of those drivers. So
I think the only argument I saw otherwise was, depending on how other things fall out, is if Zhao needs a drive for a second year, but he loses his other drive. I saw some people argue, is there potential that Haas would take him over Mick and potentially Mick has a year on the sidelines? And I guess it's some of the other argument I heard was that that's not necessarily going to be like the end of Mick's career necessarily if there's like potential future for him. I mean, yes, you want to be in, once you start driving, you kind of want to just be driving every year so you're in it and then, trying to find all the doors that are open to you. But it wasn't that long ago when drivers like Alonso, for example, had a year in a junior team and then he had a year out as a reserve driver. Ocon, I guess, they put him aside, intending for him to always go up the chain for Mercedes, which of course changed a bit when Russell came in and they kind of put the eggs in that basket. Yeah. Luckily for him, he'd proved enough to get this second chance, which is, where he's at now with Alpine and running his own career, which is good to see. I think F1's trying to encourage this culture where teams can form their own kind of unit, and yes, you can still have a junior team that's supported by a senior team, but you still want to see them, being able to make their own decisions on their own drivers, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what you're seeing Alfa Romeo do a little bit more as well. That's why it's sort of it feels like the Ferrari role switched to Haas. Haas obviously have their part at the Ferrari factory now. They've given Ferrari's given Haas a bunch of staff, and it does seem to be a bit closer than it used to be.
Next in the list, I have Alpine.
Okay.
Very interesting team because they have a young gun that's, we've been following, the young gun in question since the F3 season when they had their rookie year. And I watched that season quite closely. I know you were following it lightly and I was chatting to you about it.
Yep.
And that's when I picked up, Piastri, of course. And then he went into F2, and we thought, okay, this might be good because he might have a year or two here. And then when Alpine figure out what they're doing in the future, then he can move up. Mm-hmm. But of course, he had to just blow it out of the water and go, no, I'm ready now. Yep. And then Alpine, of course, were like, well, we're not ready for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So the question is, for 2023, do you think Alpine are ready for him? Or do you think something else maybe?
So I'm going to go with my first driver. I'm going to say Ocon's going to have the first seat. I'm going to get that one out of the way. He has the contract to 2024. I'm just building the suspense, you know.
I like it. And I'm the same, I'll say. I've got the same driver for the same reasons.
Okay.
Yep.
I ever since the year that he had in 2021, Ocon, they seem to really want to invest in him for the future as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I see him at least seeing out his contract. So, and then the second seat, I have put Piastri in it. So
yes,
I can't see Piastri waiting another year. Already the comments that he's making and the comments of people around him, and they're just like this. He needs to be in a seat. And if he doesn't get that Alpine seat, I think there'll be a lot of angry people, Piastri being one of them. I think he'll feel a little bit hard done by. So, also with the fact that Alonso's contract does end at the end of this year, I think there is a very, very real possibility that I'm not sure that Alonso will leave or not.
Yes, it's really hard to say, isn't it? When he came back, you felt like it was like a 2-year thing. So, he's got a year to get back into the sport and everything to see how he does.
Yep.
And then he has a year with the new cars just to go through that transition, right?
Yeah.
And then, if you would say that Piastri wasn't in the picture, almost I think 1000% you wouldn't pick anyone else, right?
Yep.
But I think it's the fact that he is in that picture. He is, such a talent that's shown actually he's, needs to be here right now. And fair enough that he's got a year on the sidelines. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's going to stump him at all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if they don't get him in the year after, then you'd be a bit like, okay, we get that maybe you've got Ocon for your future, but really this could be your future for the next 5-10 years, right? Or he could get scooped up by,
exactly.
Mercedes
he might
will
break
scope
contract.
him up. Yes.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And then he goes over to, Mercedes, he goes over to Williams, then they put him in when Hamilton retires, and then Alpine will be going, great, we're sitting in the lower midfield, and look where our guy was. He's up there winning championships, beating Russell potentially. Not saying he will, but that narrative, I think, is more likely than not likely.
I think Alpine have sort of they're going to have their hand forced to pick him or lose him.
Yes.
And regardless of how Alonso feels about that, whether or not he's thinking about leaving anyway, I think a lot of it depends on how strong the car is this year. Best case scenario, I think they would want Ocon, Piastri, and then Alonso to stay on maybe for another year as like a consultant sort of role to sort of help Piastri sort of integrate into the team. Whether or not Alonso leaves of his own volition or if he's forced out to give Piastri the role, I think will dictate whether that happens.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a tough call, but I think you can't ignore Piastri. He has to have the seat.
Onto a team that we might have a lot to say about, but might not. I'm curious on your take on this, is Red Bull. I think for one of their drivers, we can both safely say, isn't going to change.
Dennis Hauger.
Dennis Hauger is in for this year. Breaking news,
Let's
he's
go.
not going to change for the year after. So I think Mr. Maxi Boy.
He's gonna be there.
Yes, outside of Hand of God or some other crazy event like that, there's no reason, right? The more interesting one is the second seat. For obvious reasons. There's, the big one is that, of course, Checo is there for now. There's this thing of saying, well, is Checo just a temporary band-aid until they can find a junior or a previous driver that they want to get back in there? Even if Checo performs, is he going to perform enough to then say, well, but will he be outperforming? Will he still be performing a role? If we have another close championship, you'd still argue, yes, Verstappen won the drivers last year, but Checo was kind of the one that lost the constructors. And you'd argue, okay, this is still the Red Bull. Anyone you put in there needed time to get up to speed, and really, Checo, you could argue, maybe, stepped up on the plate when he needed to a bit more than their previous drivers, right?
Yep.
But I still have backed Checo for the following year. I don't think they will change the others. The big thing that I read a lot of from people that I really trust inside the sport, whenever they bring up Gasly, and I think they said that even though they do believe now if he went in there he would have the pace, there was still a big culture clash there that they think still wouldn't be solved, and it's almost a case of where it's such like an opposite culture at AlphaTauri that he fits in so well. I reckon they'd want to still take the stability for the year after. And I think if they're not going to go with Gasly, then it's unlikely. IMO, you might have a different opinion, I don't know yet. Unlikely they'll go with someone like Albon unless he truly kicks it out of the water and maybe there's a different reason behind the scenes. I feel like this is very much a driver pick that's more on things behind the scenes than just purely what's on track.
I mean, you could... The other person I had there, which I kind of dismissed immediately, was Yuki. If he has...
Yes, okay.
I mean, if he has...
I'm only laughing because I genuinely didn't think about it. That's why I'm laughing. Not because I want to be rude to him. Yeah. I literally didn't even think about that.
He could, if he has a fucking outstanding 2022.
It's true.
They might go with him there, but I don't know that I see that happening. Yeah, regarding the Perez-Gasly thing, I have put Gasly in that seat. A lot of this is predicated on the fact that he's going to continue his form into 2022.
Mm-hmm,
of course. I think this is another one where, particularly with all his comments about how, he's a bit disappointed about how how he hasn't gotten the call back up, and all the Red Bull higher ups are saying I know it's all media talk, but there might be an opportunity come end of 2022, and Helmut Marko said he's been impressed with his pace, and if he continues his rise this year, I think their hand will be forced again, and if they don't give him the seat, he will leave the Red Bull. I don't think he'll spend another year in AlphaTauri.
And I will totally admit that I don't know, I think I could have gone with it, but I think I like here trying to raise the spicy opinion, even though you could say, well, you're just sticking with the same two, why is that spicy? But
it's still pretty... That's the thing. It's like sometimes, like last year, it was like staying with the same two wasn't spicy at all because they were all preparing for this one. But this one, staying with the same two might be really spicy because it's like, oh, but what about this person that should be in the team instead? Or, all these... Yeah. So,
and even referring back to last year, it's all too easy to forget that everyone, and I say everyone meaning a lot of people I looked at, thought that Gasly would go to somewhere like Alpine, for this current year, and that was quite a big call, because everyone went, well, he's probably going to do well, but then they're not going to have a spot for him, they're going to move on. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess that was part changed because the Alpine situation changed a lot, where rather than having an easy seat for someone like Gasly, they didn't have a seat for Gasly, nor did they, as we've discussed, have a seat for anyone else. Yeah. So... Yeah. So, but again, you just say, well, if that was the opinion last year, well, then another year, surely he is just gonna, I guess it depends. Maybe there's a world where the AlphaTauri performs so well that he's still happy there. I mean, again, you'd say if AlphaTauri wanted to keep him on, they'd be happy, right? Because he's basically running the show. That car, has been developed amazing with him, and he's obviously very suited with it, and he loves the team and all that. For sure. And he's a great guy to have with someone in the second seat. Maybe he's, assisting and everything like that. I know he gets on well at the moment with Yuki. Yeah, so I guess it's then good time, coincidentally on the list, that the next team on there is AlphaTauri, so we might as well move on to them.
Yep.
So, as I said before, I guess this is the final of almost this little, I don't know, trinity or trio, whatever, of teams where there's maybe a few drivers that can move around. Mm-hmm. Because I don't have Gasly moving, I still have him staying there. I still think that although, he's pushing through this thing of wanting to... massage on the higher-ups to move up, I think he's just so well suited there that once he, I guess maybe... I don't know, it gets over the fact that maybe that's where he is. I think if he continues to commit to it and drive that team up, that they can still smash some great things out in the midfield and he can perform well, potentially get more podiums and such. And I don't see him, if he doesn't get the Red Bull seat, leaving or going elsewhere. Leaving in terms of leaving F1 or going elsewhere.
I've got Yuki there for one more year. Obviously, I don't have Gasly because Gasly's at Red Bull. But I've got Yuki. I do expect him to do better this year than he did for the majority of 2021. They want to invest in him, and I think with the way he's sort of changed his approach to Formula One and sort of taken it a bit more seriously, and I think he can. We've already seen it, the glimpses of pace he can show last year. I think if he can start to do that a bit more regularly, he'll do enough to hold this seat for another year. So. That's who I've got first. The second seat...
Tricky one.
Yeah. Given that I don't have Gasly in there, I have resorted to a junior driver of which there are many. There are 5 in F2. I've got 4 names here. There's technically 5 with I think Owasa, but I don't think he's gonna go in there. I think he's in a more he's like with MP or something as well. But then you've got your Dennis Hauger, your Johan Deruvela, your Liam Lawson, Yuri Vips, and they're the 4 that I was mulling over. You've got Deruvela and Hauger in the Prema, and the Prema is usually pretty strong. It's a tough one because I don't have either of those drivers in the Alpha Tauri, despite the fact that one of them very well could win.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you thought I was going to pick Hauger, didn't you?
Maybe,
yeah.
Yep.
I think Hauger's
maybe that was the easy pick.
Yeah, I think Hauger's an outstanding talent, and he very well could do what Piastri did and just win F3, win F2. I think there's a very real possibility given he's in the Prema and given the speed he showed in F3. I just think that the Red Bull program, they've banked on Vips and Lawson too much, that one of those drivers will get that seat, and I've pipped Liam Lawson to have the seat for
that's
2023.
okay. Yep, that wouldn't have been what I thought you would have guessed second.
Yeah.
Okay. Woo. Okay.
It was a tough one. This is one I struggled with for a long time. I know both Vips and Lawson have done. They did the young driver programs at the end of 2021 for like Red Bull and AlphaTauri respectively. So both of them are still very much in the forefront. Again, another reason why I don't think Deruvela or Hauger will get it straight away, because Vips and Lawson have sort of had that experience for the last 1 or 2 years in the Formula One machinery that they can. They'll be able to slot in a lot easier than someone like Hauger. But yeah, it really is a toss-up between those two. I've just kind of gone with the gut feel there in Liam Lawson. Yeah, I could be very wrong by the end of the year, but
hey, if you got to make a bold call, then make it.
Yeah.
So
yep, Tsunoda and Lawson. That's who I've got for 23.
Yep.
Tough one.
It is a hard call because basically anyone that's not Hauger, almost all of them kind of fell short to Yuki initially as well. They were still kind of in the mix around where Yuki was. I guess now because Red Bull are less just plucking their drivers that are, kind of moving up the chain, and so they go, okay, go, rather than if they stifle there, then normally Red Bull go, okay, well, you've got your second year in F2, we don't want you anymore, right? But now there seems to be more of a change of that overall in the whole ecosystem. But that would be the argument, I guess, for someone like Dennis Hauger, who I've seen a number of people mention, where if he does come in and he does pretty well, then they might similarly go down the Yuki route again and just pick him up rather than letting him stifle a bit there, and then say to the others, look, it's been great to have you, but really they go, not saying they're gonna go back to old ways in a bad way, but we'll almost make it, that's how they've always done things, right?
Especially when they have this many drivers, it
yes,
seems like a lot of them are very. Maybe Hauger will be different if he's really, really fast compared to everyone, but they're all sort of similar-ish. They all bring sort of different things, but they all sort of end up the same in terms of, pace. Or
overall consistency and such.
Yeah, so it's like you could kind of pick any one of them. The only thing I think I found out with Deruvela, despite the fact that he's sort of more or less there or thereabouts every time in F2, the 2 years he's done in F2 so far, he's lost to his teammate both times.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's still on their books for this year. I'll say that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think they already dropped someone. They dropped Jack Doohan, I think, from their program. Otherwise, they would have had 6 bloody Red Bull juniors in F2. All in like pretty top teams as well.
Yes.
It's insane. Yeah, it's a tough call for them, I think, going forward with the drivers that they have.
I haven't gone over my second driver yet, so I alluded to a bit before.
We've already talked enough about it.
This is a bit of you could have already probably predicted what it is. I think going forward they will go with Gasly Albon for 2023, and I think they'll use that to then pick who they want to go back to Red Bull for the longer term for 2024 and beyond.
Okay.
Again, I think they've got those rookies. I did think about Hauger, but then I thought, look, if I'm going to go on this Albon moving storyline, I kind of like that a bit more. Because some would argue that maybe he's going to Williams and then he can kind of do his own thing from there, but I think he still has such strong links to Red Bull that I think the end goal is to get him back in AlphaTauri.
Yep. It could be, I mean, the Yuki thing could still be to appease the Honda overlords that are still technically...
It's true, yes.
Kind of
and there is still potential there, right? He might in the new car go out gunning and they'll go, well, we've got our next Max, right? And I'm not kicking Yuki out because I think he's a bad driver, right? But I just think... Again, when I think the culture going forward now is stability, I think a 2023 Gasly Albon to then properly evaluate them and have two solid drivers that are going to really push the team well. And then kind of next year, Red Bull after that, I think is where they'll go. So I guess I like that kind of almost stability there rather than a shake-up like most people are thinking of.
The other thing I was tossing up is if I didn't think Gasly will get the Red Bull seat, because I don't think he'll stay at AlphaTauri, I think he potentially he could have broken to go with Williams given their trajectory. There's not I couldn't find another spot for him other than Williams. That was the only sort of other spot that I had that was kind of, maybe they would like him. But then do you have like a Gasly Albon thing where one of them has been snubbed by the Red Bull program, one's still got ties to the Red Bull program? Then I would probably go Gasly Latifi, and then where does Albon go? It changes everything. I was just thinking too much. I'm just like, if I go down that path, it's just going to be too much. So
next team we've got is Alfa Romeo Sauber. Probably not as interesting as others, but still interesting enough. Part of the conversation, of course, is, well, Guan Yu Zhao, is he just there for a buy-in for 1 year, and then if he doesn't perform, then they have the option to get rid of him or not? Or will they want to keep him on because of the benefits, or will he move to a different team? Based on what I've said so far, I don't have him going on anymore. But I will say, first off, I think Bottas there will be more than a 1 year deal. I don't see it as him just holding on to some last grasp in F1 and then leaving. I think he'll do different to Kimi, where Kimi did seem like he was more there just because the team enjoyed having him there and just to kind of these last few years before the new regs, and have him there. I think Bottas will actually come in there and properly go, develop what do we need to do, guys? If we're looking for success in 3-4 years, what do you need me to do? Do you need me in the sim? Who do I need to talk to? Let's, work on this thing for at least 2 years. 2024, no idea. I don't know where I place him, but I'm pretty confident 2023 Bottas would still be there. That's one of the more confident predictions I have. Do you have similar or a different call?
No, I have Bottas there. He's been given a multi-year contract, and I see him there for like I said, at least 2 years. Like you said, 3 years is maybe a bit presumptuous, but I see him there for 2 years, which includes this year and next year. So while they've had like a Kubica in the past to sort of develop in the background, and they really like him, they've missed having that, that really experienced driver, like the full-time driver, to be able to do that. And I think they'll be able to get that with Bottas, particularly with Bottas having just come from the most successful team in the, the last 7 years, 8 years. I think they will value his input quite a lot, and I think he will be a very key factor in that team moving forward. So
the second seat, I have gone down the line, and there was a bit of discussion about this driver for this year, but I think that they talk about him enough internally, and I think just some of the comments made about how up and gunning star he is for how young he is.
I know who it is.
You kind of, is Théo Pourchaire. He was in the same F3 year that Piastri was in. He came from a bit of a different story, where throughout the start of the year, if I remember correctly, his upward surge in the second half of the year was insane, so much that I think even going into the last 2 races or something...
He, Piastri, and Sargent were the only ones still capable of
and then Sargent got unlucky, and then I think it was Piastri fell back a bit, and technically, at some point, if you froze the results, Pourchaire had it, but then I think Piastri just had to climb a few places, so
you just needed to
for
get
that F3 year...
Yeah.
Yes, it was called for those two, that those are probably the next two up and coming. And you think about drivers like Yuki, and that's been quite young, but I think he really is in that degree where he is I don't know how young off the top of my head now. I just remember
He's
him always
18,
being
I
talked
think.
about.
Yeah.
Yes, always talked about in F3 being extremely young and
Yep.
showing someone who's maybe in their 20, 21, 22, 23 kind of category, right? That's
Yep.
maybe had a few more years, but he's really shot through quite young. And I hear Frederick Vassar still talk about him a giant amount. And again, as we're saying, if teams want to get their new rookies in now, their future guys they want for the next 4 or 5 years, they've got Bottas there. What perfect a guy to pair with Bottas than Théo Pourchaire, you know, when Bottas has had a year to get used to the team, mentor him, even, you know, to get him in the background between a lot of the garages for this year.
This was another one that I was tossing up between the Zhou and Pourchaire. They were really the only two options that I had. Again, you still have all the Ferrari juniors, but like I said, I think Alfa Romeo is sort of moving away from having the Ferrari, you know, just having a Ferrari driver just because of their ties to Ferrari. So,
and especially considering he is an actual Sauber junior,
a Sauber
as well,
junior,
so it's actually one of their juniors. So it's not
yeah.
like just some random driver. Yeah,
it's similar to your Sargent being a Williams junior, which is why we think he's going to get that seat because he's more closely tied to the team. Pourchaire being the Sauber junior, I think he has a decent shot of getting it. In saying that, I've got Zhou for one more year.
I didn't expect you to pick that.
Yeah, so from a couple of the things that I've read, they have said that they don't want to rush things with Pourchaire. Like, they don't want to try and move things too quickly. I see them sticking with just because of the new cars, the new regulations this year. I think kind of having someone for a year and then ditching him it's a little unfair. I know Zhao's sort of pay driver and whatnot, but I think even doing that for a pay driver is very, very unfair given the circumstances. So I think they might keep the same lineup for one more year, and Pourchaire might get the reserve and test role for 2023, so he can slowly get integrated into the team.
It would almost be guaranteed, wouldn't it? You'd have to really stuff it up to... and that gives him some really good experience there. Gives him a few years in the F2 category. He's with ART again. They're competitive. I think he was a bit unlucky last season. Had a couple of retirements, particularly towards the end of the season, that just sort of dropped him way back. But it was a tough one. It was another one I had to sort of mull over. But just given what I saw, the people at Alfa Romeo say how they sort of wanted to play it, sort of play the long game. And like I said, I see Bottas there for 2, 3, 4 years anyway. So I think he'll still benefit from getting that relationship with Bottas and that experience from him when he eventually does join the team. And I will stipulate as well, I'm not wanting to kick Zhou because I think he's a bad driver. I've always, and you can attest to it, I've always liked him in F2, and I've always seen that he's gotten quite unlucky, especially in 2020. I think he started very strong, but then he instantly started with a few retirements and engine failures, and he got quite unlucky, I think. I just don't think it's the right time for a driver like him to be there. I just think if they don't go with Pourchaire, they would almost miss the right timing to make a move like that, and they can do it a bit later on, but then I just feel like that's probably a bit too late when other teams are then starting to really get integrated with their core drivers there for the future, and they're almost going to be like a year ahead. If Mazepin was more there as Mazepin and not as a pay driver, I could almost quite easily see Mazepin going out and Zhou replacing him for 2023, but of course that's not going to happen. So the next I've got on my list is McLaren.
We haven't done McLaren yet, have we?
No. So is McLaren, I guess we talked in our season review for last year, we talked about them, I guess, in the same vein to Ferrari, where we figured, look, they're two drivers that, regardless of what happened at the start of the year, but look, they're pretty solid. You wouldn't see the team wanting to probably, unless you think otherwise, get rid of them, or the drivers really have anywhere else they're likely to move to. So I've got the same, I've got the same pairing. You have the same pairing?
I do, yes.
Question mark?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
Norris has again, he has a multi-year contract he signed last year. They're not going to get rid of Norris.
And let's be real, Norris isn't going to let them get rid of him if they wanted to.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Ricciardo, I think, has a contract until the end of 2023 as well. So, and I don't see, given how much McLaren worked to get Ricciardo in that seat, they're not going to break his contract unless he has an absolute stinker. And I think if he does any worse than he did this year, then I think that you could probably class that as a stinker. Or last year, rather. It didn't any worse than he did last year. You could probably class that as a stinker. But, they've still backed him for 2022, so I think they'll back him for 2023 as well.
And I think, yes, he's had this trend almost of going to teams and kind of smashing it a bit there and then moving on in the past. Well, I feel like now, actually, this is probably a really good project and a challenge for him, to prove himself over 2022 and 2023 to then rise back to the top, and then maybe after that, look, let's see what happens. You know? But it'd be weird if he was to either drop out or move around. I couldn't even place where he would go, not just because we're talking about him later on, but I mean in general, if you think about other permutations. Look, other than maybe moving to something like a Ferrari or an Aston somehow, both of which are like more locked down than even maybe McLaren. It's like okay,
because there's like if he left McLaren, that's effectively 4 teams he's locked out of in the sense that he's not going to go back to Red Bull or Alpha Tauri. He's not going to go back to Alpine. Obviously, being kicked out of McLaren is like, well, where's left?
When we did see his struggles, there was at no point where McLaren was saying, okay, we need him to pick up the slack. They kind of were at least understanding where he was at and saying, no, we're more than patient at this. We're still happy with how he's doing. Even if compared to Norris, he's faltering a bit. They've obviously given him that patience and that backing to say, this isn't just this year for us or this race. This is a longer term thing.
Yeah.
This is a sticky period, but let's properly work hard to make sure the next few years are going to be the opposite of that, and the 3 of us being the 2 drivers in the team can move together as a whole unit. And then we come to, if I've counted to 10 correctly, lucky last.
I don't think we missed anything.
No, the Silver/Dark Knights.
They're going back to silver. I think they announced
yes,
they're going back
I
to
wasn't
silver arrows.
Sure, but yes. Or they might even splash something different. I think they've had a bit of a spice up with their sponsors and such, so who knows? They the past few years have shown they can spice things up with colours and that, they're not just the silver anymore. One driver here, which I'll be very, very, very surprised if you change one if you hit your head, of course, is Russell. Of course, he's coming in there to be...
I've fucked him off.
You're like, I've got the inside, I've got the notes, I got the notes, he's gone. I've got the interview. Yes, Russell, look, this is his first year here. This is what he's been training all his bloody life for. He's just going to smack the ground running and just not look back for the next X number of years, where X is greater than 5 or 6, right? At least something like that. Of course, then you'd say on the other seat, well, how is that going to change then when you look at everything else that we've predicted, and what the hell, they're just going to throw someone like Vesti in there, right?
Yeah, let's go.
But I guess... Yeah, but part of the chatter still is, well, what if he does, maybe after a year, behind Russell or behind Max again or behind someone else even, what's the likelihood he would retire? I guess the argument for Hamilton, let's say his name, this mystery man that no one knows that we're talking about.
Who is it?
Yeah, we're saying with Hamilton is that it's I think it's
Rosberg,
unlikely.
That's who we're talking about. He's coming back. He's making a comeback.
He's coming back. That's not who you were talking about. I don't understand anymore. I don't see him when he is done moving to like a different team. I think he will very much say, I've had my tie. This has been my legacy in F1. I'm moving on. Unless there's some, I don't even know, like Porsche announcing they're entering, and he's joining with them, and you'd go, what? I still have Hamilton for 2023 in there, but as I said, I think the argument would be that Red Bull or potentially, hopefully, another team might even outpip them in general, and if Russell is just so good on his game like we know he can be, that he does consistently outpip him a bit, I can see a world where actually he says, look, I know I'm kind of throwing you guys under the bus a bit here, but he's always kind of done what he wants. The team has very much been supportive of that. He can almost lean back on that and say, okay, now this isn't just going to work for another year for me, and I just want to move on to other things. So I'm curious if you think there's any chance of that happening and what weird thing you've got, or even if you haven't gone with it, I'm still curious on your thoughts about that.
Yeah. I've got Hamilton for another year. It's a tough one. Obviously, even with this year, there's still, with his radio silence or whatever, there's still the talks that
There
he
is
might
still
not
technically
even,
he's not confirmed.
he's not
Right,
confirmed
100%.
as a
yes.
driver. I think he will be. I think there's a lot of talk and news articles coming out, given it's weird considering he literally hasn't spoken to anyone about all of this except for Toto,
from
and
credible
Toto hasn't
inside
shared.
sources.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, okay. I do expect him to come back. I think he's probably just taking the time away. That was a rough end of the year last year, and I can understand him wanting to take some time away and not really involve himself in the world and get his head right again. But I do think that he is very much still at the top of his game, and he's still racing as well as ever. So I expect him for this year, and I do expect him for... I don't know that Russell will blow him out of the water in the first year enough to where he will want to leave. I think
it's pretty unlikely. Yeah.
Well, as much as we've seen Russell in one race against Bottas, on a track that on a circuit that no one else had really driven, and yes, he did well, but that's one instance against not even Hamilton. It was against his teammate, who we know can be sort of hot and cold. So it's, I do think in that at least in the first year, I think Hamilton will still be fine against Russell. He's not going to get blown out, and I think he'll hold on for at least one more year. After then, from 2024 onwards, I couldn't call. Like you said, I think it does depend on. It depends on where that car is in terms of performance. One of the things that you could really argue, which I guess we'll go into for our 2022 season predictions when we eventually do that one. But with the Mercedes Red Bull battle, how tough they had to fight it out. They had to allocate resources to this year to win that title battle. And with Ferrari and McLaren, they didn't have to do that as much because there was less, there was less reason to. They weren't fighting for a championship. They could allocate pretty much all their resources to that 2022 car. So I think the race did a really good video a couple of days ago talking about that, actually, whether or not they could. And they said, there's a very real chance that one or both of Mercedes and Red Bull could drop back because of it, because they've underdeveloped the car compared to their competitors. And you've even seen it in the past, in like previous, it was like 2008. The following year, Brawn just come out and they're just like, oh, yep, they've developed the car for next year, because they were nowhere when they were Honda. They were like 8th or 9th in the constructors. And they've just developed all this for the 2029 regs, and Brawn being Mercedes, they just came out and they just absolutely bossed it with, from day one. Even Red Bull, who I think were 3rd or 4th in the constructors, they were a close 2nd in that year, and it must have been Ferrari and McLaren that were fighting for that 2008 season. They dropped back because they had to allocate those resources to that season. They couldn't for the 2009 season. So it's like, we've seen this in the past. It's not it's not a far cry to say that it could happen again. I think they've probably gotten a little bit more wise to it this time around, but who knows? That was a tough battle between Mercedes and Red Bull, so who knows what they actually needed to do to keep both those cars in it. So I forget what my original point was, but yeah, I've got Russell and Hamilton there.
Well, you're also talking about Hamilton's performance and how that might change.
Maybe
that's a caveat. They fall behind. Okay. Yeah, and I guess the other point, of course, to mention relevant to that is heading into the turbo hybrid era, and how Mercedes themselves kind of I think they said something like 3 years out or something when the engine rules were agreed upon, they started working on straight away on that new engine. And then when they started that era, if you remember, that they were blisteringly quick, but not only that, but also customer teams like Williams and that were actually raised up a lot because they had that.
And again, Red Bull, they dropped back because they had to, they allocated resources.
It's true, because they were 4 in a row up. Yep.
Yeah, and I think they actually took, in one of the last races in 2013, they took an upgrade. And again, the race video alerted me to that fact as well.
It well.
And then, so that's, Mercedes are just like, okay, we'll take the top spot for the next 8 years. Thank you very much.
Yep.
We'll see, but yeah, I have Hamilton there for at least 2 years of these new regs. From there, we'll see what happens. But last thing I want to mention, which you might not have even picked up on because I didn't mention it, but the one driver I had to leave out of all this was Sergio Perez. He didn't get a seat in my in mine, so I don't know what he does, but he's not in my 2023. Either way,
it's hard to place. I've seen some calls. I've seen people put him in Williams. I've seen people put him in Alfa Romeo.
I've seen Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, but I think if he wasn't to get into Red Bull, I think he would be more likely to leave and slot in somewhere else as well. So I would be in agreement with you.
But yeah, we've gone very, very different this time. I think last time it was like 7 or 8 of them were the same, and then we had a couple different.
Yes, there was one or two calls that would be interested in this. Yeah, I'm very interested. I think I'm excited to start talking about this year. We're seeing even information come out from teams, from drivers, from testing, of course, from cars.
Yep.
And of course, we're going to be unlike what we said last year, but this year we are going to be covering it all, at least as best we can.
Yeah, we have a plan. We have a calendar, even.
We have
a Google
L
calendar.
As the kids
L
are saying.
plan.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
L calendar.
L calendar.
Better than an L plan. So we will be covering it. So if you haven't, subscribed and checked us out already, then please do. We'd love to, have you for this year. Always, if you've got any questions or queries or comments, leave them in the comments, or you can check our Twitter. And if you do have anything you want us to discuss, look, we'll always bring it up and have a chat about it. And we're always interested to see what you guys are thinking and talking about.
Yeah, we got a few videos planned before the start of season, like we've alluded to. We've got the 2022 season predictions. Before that, coming out hopefully the weekend after we upload this video, we're going to do just sort of a general news video, kind of like the first videos that we did. There's a lot of news. Silly season's crazy. So I'm just going to kind of cover
always
a lot
silly
of that.
Season.
Yeah. And then we're going to be pretty close to pre-season test in Barcelona, and then we're sort of going to give our thoughts on that. We're going to go through all the car launches when they all launch. We're going to
That's the thing. Once car launches start, that's when the year properly feels like it's starting.
Yeah. So lots of videos. We'll cover both the pre-season tests at Barcelona and then Bahrain, because we've actually got 2 this year because COVID didn't fuck them quite as hard.
Yeah, and I guess, yes. Well, part that and part they want to give them, of course, a bit more time to get used to everything new. So if there are mishaps,
give them one day and figure it out. Yeah.
You got one lap. Yeah. One lap race for the championship.
One lap qualifying. That's it. Yeah. Can we introduce that? Yeah.
One lap shootout, start 10 wide. Or
and then
best driver.
From there, we've got the Bahrain race. It's like the week after the Bahrain test, I think. So, we're getting to the sharp end of the off season. So stay tuned. We've got a lot planned. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good season, I hope.
Oh, it's gonna be good. If it's not good, I'd be surprised. Very surprised.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.
Ciao.